The winter wind was cold and sharp that evening. It cut through the streets of the city like a knife. People walked fast with their heads down. They wanted to get home quickly. They wanted to be warm. Nobody had time to stop. Nobody had time to look around, but one young woman was not going home. She had no home to go to. Her name was Elena. She was 23 years old. She had long dark hair that she had not washed in many days. Her clothes were old and thin. They did not keep out the cold. Her shoes had holes in them. Her fingers were red and painful from the freezing air, but Elena carried something precious. In her hands she held an old violin case. The case was brown and scratched. The leather was coming apart at the corners. But what was inside that case was worth more to her than anything in the world. It was her grandmother's violin. It was the only thing she had left. Elena walked slowly down the street. She looked at the restaurants with their bright lights. She looked at the people inside eating hot food. Her stomach made a sound. She had not eaten in 2 days. She had drunk water from a fountain in the park that morning. That was all. She stopped in front of a very nice restaurant. It was called the Golden Table. It was the kind of place where rich people came to eat. The kind of place where one meal cost more money than Elena had seen in months. Through the big glass windows, she could see people in beautiful clothes. They were laughing and talking. Waiters in black suits carried plates of food that looked like art. Elena stood there for a long time. She was afraid. What she was about to do was very hard for her. She had been a proud person once. She had been someone important. But hunger changes people. Hunger makes you do things you never thought you would do. She took a deep breath. Then she pushed open the heavy door and walked inside. The warm air hit her face like a wave. It felt so good. The restaurant smelled like cooking meat and fresh bread. Elena's stomach made another sound, louder this time. She hoped nobody heard it. A man in a black suit walked toward her quickly. He was the manager. His name tag said Mr. Richardson. He had gray hair and cold eyes. He looked at Elena's dirty clothes. He looked at her messy hair. His face showed what he was thinking. He was thinking that she did not belong here. "Can I help you?" he asked, but his voice was not kind. His voice said, "Please leave." Elena held her violin case tighter. Her heart was beating fast. "I am sorry to bother you, sir," she said. Her English was good, but she had an accent. She was not from this country. "I am a violin player. I was hoping, could I play some music for your customers? Just for a little while. I do not want money. I only want some food, please." Mr. Richardson looked at her like she was crazy. Behind him, 2 waiters stopped to watch. One of them, a young man with red hair, started to smile. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile people make when they think something is funny but also sad. "You want to play violin for food?" Mr. Richardson said. He did not try to hide his surprise. "This is a fine dining restaurant, miss. We have a reputation. We cannot have street performers inside." Elena felt her face become hot. She knew what he was thinking. He was thinking she was a beggar. He was thinking she was nobody. Once she had played for thousands of people. Once she had worn beautiful dresses and taken bows on great stages. But that was another life. That was before everything went wrong. "I understand," she said quietly. She turned to leave. Her eyes were wet, but she did not let the tears fall. She would not cry in front of these people. "Wait," Mr. Richardson said. Elena stopped. The manager looked at her for a long moment. Maybe he saw something in her eyes. Maybe he felt a little bit sorry. Or maybe he just thought it would be entertaining. "There's a patio outside. In the back. Some of our guests smoke there. You can play there. But if anyone complains, even one person, you leave immediately. Understood?" Elena nodded fast. Yes, I understand." "Thank you. Thank you so much." Mr. Richardson pointed to a door at the back of the restaurant. "Through there," he said. Then he walked away. He had already forgotten about her. The young waiter with red hair laughed quietly. Playing violin for food, he said to his friend. What is this, the 1800s? His friend laughed too. Elena heard them. She pretended she did not. She walked through the restaurant with her head down. People looked at her as she passed. She could feel their eyes. She could feel their judgment. She did not belong here, and everyone knew it. She pushed open the back door and stepped onto the patio. The cold hit her again. The patio had some heaters, tall metal things that glowed orange and gave out warmth. There were several tables out here. Most of them were empty. But one large table in the corner was full of people. There were 6 of them. 4 men and 2 women. They all wore expensive clothes. They had glasses of wine that probably cost more than Elena could earn in a week. They were laughing loudly about something. They looked like people who had never known hunger. People who had never been cold. People who had never been afraid. One of the men was very loud. He had gray hair at his temples and wore a suit that looked very expensive. His name was Richard, but Elena did not know that yet. He was a businessman. He was very rich and very proud of it. He liked people to know he was important. Richard saw Elena walk onto the patio. He saw her old clothes and her violin case. He stopped talking and pointed at her. Well, 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 he said loudly. His friends all turned to look. What do we have here? Did the restaurant hire entertainment? He laughed at his own joke. One of the women, a lady with blonde hair and too much jewelry, wrinkled her nose. She looks homeless, she whispered. But she whispered it loudly enough for Elena to hear. Elena found a spot near one of the heaters. Her hands were shaking. She was not sure if it was from the cold or from fear. She put her violin case on the ground and opened it slowly. The violin inside was old. It had scratches and the color was faded in some places. But it was beautiful. Her grandmother had given it to her when she was just 4 years old. This violin has magic in it, her grandmother had said. But the magic only works if you have music in your heart. Elena picked up the violin carefully. She picked up the bow. She could feel the eyes of the rich people watching her. She could feel their judgment, their doubt, their amusement. Richard said something to his friends, and they all laughed. Elena did not hear the words, but she knew they were laughing at her. She closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. She tried to forget where she was. She tried to forget her hunger. She tried to forget the cold and the laughter and the shame. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the small house where she grew up. She thought about sitting by the fire while her grandmother taught her how to hold the bow. Then Elena put the bow to the strings, and the world changed. Richard could not stop laughing. He had been telling jokes all evening. He had been drinking expensive wine and feeling very good about himself. Now this dirty girl with a violin had walked onto the patio. This was the funniest thing he had seen in weeks. Look at her, he said to his friends. She probably found that violin in a garbage can. This should be entertaining. His wife, Margaret, put her hand on his arm. Richard, please, she said. Do not be cruel. But Richard did not listen. He never listened to his wife. He was too rich to listen to anyone. He had built a company from nothing. He had millions of dollars. He believed this made him better than other people. I am not being cruel, Richard said. I am being realistic. This girl clearly has problems. Probably drugs. Look at her clothes. Look at her hair. People like this should not be allowed in nice places. The other people at the table laughed nervously. Some of them felt bad about laughing. But Richard was powerful. He was the kind of man you did not disagree with. The kind of man who could help your business or destroy it. So they laughed when he laughed. Elena heard everything. She stood by the heater with her violin, her face burning with shame. Every word Richard said was like a knife in her heart. She wanted to run away. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to be anywhere but here, but she could not run. She was too hungry. She was too tired. She had nowhere else to go. So she lifted her violin. Her hands were still shaking. She placed the bow on the strings. She closed her eyes. Here we go, Richard announced loudly. Free entertainment. I hope she knows Mary Had a Little Lamb. That is probably the only song homeless people know. His friends laughed again. Elena did not play Mary Had a Little Lamb. She played the first notes of Tchaikovsky's violin concerto in D major. The sound that came from her violin was like nothing the people on that patio had ever heard. It was rich and deep and beautiful. It filled the cold night air like something alive. The notes rose up into the sky and seemed to make the stars shine brighter. Richard's laugh died in his throat. The woman with the blonde hair put down her wine glass. One of the men at the table, a laird named David, felt something strange happen in his chest. He felt like he wanted to cry. He had not cried since he was a child. Elena kept playing. Her eyes were still closed. She was not on the patio anymore. She was somewhere else. She was in her grandmother's house. She was on the stage of the great concert hall in Vienna, where she had performed when she was just 17. She was everywhere she had ever been happy. The music was not just beautiful. It was technically perfect. The Tchaikovsky Concerto is one of the hardest pieces of music ever written for violin. Professional musicians practice for years before they can play it. Many never master it at all. But Elena's fingers moved across the strings like they were dancing, like they knew every note by heart. Because they did, inside the restaurant, people started to notice. A waiter carrying a tray of food stopped walking. He stood frozen, listening. The food on his tray grew cold, but he did not care. Mr. Richardson, the manager, was talking to a customer when he heard the music. He stopped mid-sentence. His mouth hung open. What was that sound? It was coming from the patio. It was coming from the homeless girl. That was impossible. He walked quickly to the back door. He pushed it open and stood there watching. His face showed complete shock. More people came to look. They pressed against the windows. They came out onto the patio. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just listened. Elena played on. The music grew more intense. It swelled and fell like waves in the ocean. It told a story without words, a story of joy and pain, of loss and hope, of everything it means to be human. Richard sat completely still. His wine glass was in his hand, but he had forgotten about it. He had never heard anything like this. He had been to opera houses. He had been to symphony concerts. He had heard famous musicians play. But this was different. This was something else entirely. The music reached inside him and touched something he had forgotten was there. Something soft. Something human. He felt ashamed of the things he had said. He felt ashamed of who he had become. His wife Margaret had tears running down her face. She did not wipe them away. She did not care if her makeup was ruined. She just sat and listened and cried. The music went on for 10 minutes. Then 20. Elena played different pieces. She played Paganini. She played Bach. She played music that should have been impossible for one person to play. But she played it perfectly. She played it like it was the easiest thing in the world. A small crowd had gathered now. People had come from inside the restaurant. People had come from the street. They stood in the cold and forgot they were cold. They stood and listened and felt things they could not explain. An old man pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His name was Antonio. He was 72 years old. He had white hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. He walked with a cane because his legs did not work so well anymore. But his ears worked perfectly. And he knew music. He knew it better than almost anyone. Antonio had been the conductor of the city's symphony orchestra for 30 years. He had worked with the greatest musicians in the world. He had heard talent. He had heard genius. But what he was hearing now made him feel like he had never really heard anything before. He watched Elena play. He watched her fingers move. He watched her face, so peaceful, so lost in the music. And he felt something he had not felt in many years. Hope. The music world was full of good musicians. It was even full of great musicians. But true genius was rare. Once in a generation, maybe. And here was this girl, this hungry homeless girl in torn clothes, playing on a restaurant patio like it was Carnegie Hall, playing with more skill and more soul than most people could dream of having. Where had she come from? Who had taught her? Why was she here begging for food when she should be performing on the greatest stages in the world? Antonio had to know. He had to understand. This girl was special. This girl was perhaps the most special thing he had encountered in his entire career. The music finally came to an end. Elena played the last note and held it. The sound hung in the air like something magical. Then it faded into silence. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then the applause started. It was not polite applause. It was not the kind of clapping people do because they think they should. It was real. It was loud. It was the sound of people who had just experienced something they would never forget. Richard was clapping too. His hands moved on their own. He could not believe what he had just heard. He could not believe how wrong he had been. Elena opened her eyes. She looked surprised to see so many people. She looked confused, like she was waking up from a dream. She lowered her violin slowly. Antonio pushed forward through the crowd. He had to reach her. He had to talk to her before she disappeared. "Young lady," he called out. His voice was shaking. "Young lady, please wait." Elena looked at the old man with the cane. She did not know who he was. She did not know that he was about to change her life forever. "Please," Antonio said. "Please, I must ask you. Who are you? Where did you learn to play like that?" Elena held her violin close to her chest. Her eyes were tired and sad. She looked at the crowd of people staring at her. She looked at their nice clothes and their full stomachs and their comfortable lives. Then she looked back at the old man. There was something different about him. Something kind. Something that made her feel like she could trust him. "My name is Elena," she said quietly. "And I learned from my grandmother. In a small village very far from here." Antonio nodded. His eyes were wet with tears. "I have been in music my whole life," he said. "I have heard the greatest players in the world. But I have never heard anyone play like you. Never." Elena did not know what to say. She had not expected this. She had only wanted a meal. She had only wanted to survive one more day. She did not know that survival was no longer her biggest problem. Everything was about to change. The crowd was still applauding. People were wiping tears from their eyes. Some were taking out their phones to record videos. But Elena barely noticed any of this. She was looking at the old man with the kind eyes. "I am sorry," she said. "I do not understand. Who are you?" The old man smiled gently. He reached into his coat and pulled out a card. He handed it to Elena. She looked at it. The card said, "Antonio Rossi, Conductor Emeritus, City Philharmonic Orchestra." Elena's eyes went wide. She knew that name. Everyone who studied classical music knew that name. Antonio Rossi was a legend. He had conducted orchestras all over the world. He had won every award a conductor could win. And now he was standing in front of her on a cold patio, looking at her like she was the most important thing he had ever seen. "You are Antonio Rossi," she whispered. "I have watched videos of you conducting. When I was in school. When I was before. Before what?" Antonio asked softly. "Please, Elena, tell me your story. Tell me how someone who plays like an angel is standing outside a restaurant asking for food." Elena looked down at her violin. This question hurt. The answer hurt even more. But something about this old man made her want to tell the truth. Made her want to share the pain she had been carrying alone. "It is a long story," she said. "I have time," Antonio replied. "All the time in the world." The crowd was starting to go back inside. The night was cold and they had finished watching the show. But some people stayed. Richard, the man who had laughed at Elena, was still sitting at his table. He had not moved. He could not stop looking at the girl he had mocked. He felt terrible about what he had done. But he did not know how to fix it. Mr. Richardson, the restaurant manager, came out onto the patio. He looked different now. His face was not cold anymore. He looked shocked and confused. "Miss," he said to Elena, "please, come inside. Let me get you something to eat." Whatever you want. It is on the house. Elena shook her head. Thank you, sir. But I think I need to talk to this man first. Antonio nodded. He pointed to a quiet corner of the patio near one of the heaters. Let us sit over there, he said. You can tell me your story. And then we can eat. They walked to the corner and sat down in 2 chairs. The heater made a soft humming sound. It pushed warm air toward them. Elena felt the warmth on her face and almost cried. She had been so cold for so long. Start at the beginning, Antonio said. Where are you from? Elena took a deep breath. I was born in a small village in Ukraine, she said. It was a very poor place. Most people there were farmers. But my grandmother, she was different. She had been a violin player in Kyiv when she was young. She had played in the national orchestra, but then she got married and moved to the village with my grandfather. She paused. The memories were coming back. Memories she had tried to forget. My grandmother kept her violin, even when times were hard, even when there was no money for food. She said the violin was her soul. She could not sell her soul. Antonio listened carefully. He did not interrupt. He understood that this story needed to come out slowly. When I was 4 years old, my grandmother put a tiny violin in my hands. She taught me to hold it. She taught me to use the bow. She said I had a gift. She said the music was inside me, waiting to come out. Elena smiled sadly. She was a good teacher, the best teacher. Every day for hours and hours, she taught me. By the time I was 10, I had learned everything she knew. So she saved money, little by little, and she sent me to a special music school in Kyiv. The conservatory, Antonio said. He knew the school. It was one of the best in the world for training young musicians. Yes, Elena said. I went there when I was 11. It was hard. So hard. The other students had expensive instruments. They had private teachers since they were babies. They had rich parents. I had nothing but my grandmother's old violin and the things she taught me. She looked down at the violin case at her feet. But I worked harder than anyone. I practiced until my fingers bled. I listened and learned. And slowly I got better. By the time I was 15, I was the best student in the school. The teachers said they had never seen anyone like me. Antonio nodded. He could believe this. What he had heard tonight was not normal talent. It was something beyond that. Something rare and precious. When I was 17, I won a big competition, Elena continued. I got to perform in Vienna, in the great concert hall. It was the happiest day of my life. My grandmother was so proud. She cried and cried when she saw me on the stage. Her voice started to shake. The hard part was coming. After that, everything was good. I had chances to perform in many places. People wanted to help me. Record companies, concert promoters. Everyone said I would be famous. Everyone said I would be the next great violinist. She stopped. She could not speak for a moment. Antonio waited patiently. Then the war started, Elena said quietly. The war in my country. The Russians came. My village was in the east, near the fighting. Antonio felt his heart grow heavy. He knew about the war. Everyone knew about the war. But hearing it from this girl made it real in a way it had not been before. I was in Kyiv when the bombs started falling. I tried to call my grandmother. The phones did not work. I tried to go back to my village. The roads were blocked. The army would not let anyone through. Tears were running down Elena's face now. She did not wipe them away. It took me 3 weeks to get information. 3 weeks of not knowing. Not sleeping, not eating, just waiting and praying. She took a shaking breath. My village was destroyed. The Russians bombed it. There was nothing left. My grandmother did not survive. Antonio reached out and took her hand. It was cold and thin. He held it gently. I am so sorry, he said. I am so very sorry. Elena nodded. She tried to control her tears. After that, I could not stay. I could not be in my country anymore. Everything reminded me of her. Every street, every building, every note of music. So you left? Antonio said. So I left. I got on a bus with other refugees. We crossed many borders, Poland, Germany. I ended up in America because someone said it was safe here. They said there were opportunities. They said I could start over. She laughed bitterly. But starting over is not easy. I had no money. I had no papers for a long time. I could not work legally. I could not find anyone to help me. The music world here is different. Everyone wants to know who you know, who represents you, what school you went to. I had none of that. Surely the conservatory could help, Antonio said. Your teachers, your contacts. Elena shook her head. The war destroyed everything. Records were lost. People scattered. My teachers were gone. Some dead. Some escaped to other countries. The school itself was damaged. There was no one to call, no one to vouch for me. She looked at Antonio with eyes full of pain. For months I tried. I knocked on doors. I sent emails. I called music schools and orchestras. Everyone was polite. Everyone said they would get back to me. No one did. Antonio felt anger rising in his chest. This girl was a genius, a real genius. And the music world had ignored her, had let her fall through the cracks, had left her on the street. How long have you been homeless? He asked. 3 months, Elena said. At first I stayed in shelters, but the shelters are full, and I was afraid someone would steal my violin, my grandmother's violin. So I started sleeping in parks, in doorways, wherever I could find a safe spot. And playing for food, Antonio said. And playing for food, Elena repeated. Every day I go to different places. I play on street corners, in subway stations. Sometimes people give money. Usually not. Tonight I was so hungry. I had not eaten in 2 days. I saw this restaurant and I thought maybe if I asked nicely. She could not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Antonio sat back in his chair. His mind was racing. This girl had lost everything. Her family, her home, her country, her career, everything, and yet she was still here, still playing, still making music that could make angels weep. He knew what he had to do. He had known from the moment he heard her first note. Elena, he said, I'm going to make a phone call. I want you to stay right here. Can you do that for me? Elena looked confused. A phone call? To who? Antonio smiled. To someone who needs to hear you play. Someone who can help. Trust me, Elena. I know you have no reason to trust anyone anymore. But please, trust me. Elena looked at his kind eyes. She looked at his gentle face. She thought about her grandmother, who had trusted her with the violin, who had trusted her with the music. Okay, she said quietly. I will stay. Antonio stood up. He pulled out his phone. He walked a few steps away and dialed a number. On the other end, a woman answered. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chun. She was the artistic director of the city's Philharmonic Orchestra, and she was about to meet someone who would change everything. Sarah Chun wiped her eyes. She felt embarrassed. She was a professional. She was the director of one of the best orchestras in the country. She did not cry in public. She did not show emotion like this, but Elena's music had broken something inside her. It had reached into her chest and touched her heart directly. No barriers. No protection. Just pure, raw beauty. How old are you? Sarah asked. Her voice was still shaking. 23, Elena said. And you learned to play like this in Ukraine? Yes, my grandmother taught me. Then I went to the conservatory in Kyiv. Sarah nodded slowly. She was thinking, planning. Her mind was already working on solutions. Antonio told me some of your story on the phone, she said. The war. Your grandmother. Coming here as a refugee. Is all of that true? Yes, ma'am. All of it, Sarah looked at Antonio. He nodded. They had known each other for 30 years. They did not need words to communicate. They both understood what they had found. And they both understood what they needed to do. Elena, Sarah said carefully, I would like to invite you to audition for the Philharmonic Orchestra, formally, in our concert hall, in front of our artistic committee. Elena's eyes went wide. Audition? But I do not have proper clothes. I do not have sheet music. I do not have. Sarah held up her hand. We will take care of everything. The audition will be next week. That gives us time to prepare. Until then, you will stay somewhere safe, somewhere warm. We will make sure you have everything you need. Richard stepped forward. I can help with that, he said. I own a hotel downtown. The Plaza, she can stay there as long as she needs. In the best suite. Everything paid for. Elena looked at him in shock. This was the man who had laughed at her. The man who had called her names. And now he was offering her a hotel suite? I cannot accept that, she said. It is too much. Please, Richard said. His voice was sincere. Let me do this. I was cruel to you. I judged you without knowing you. This is the least I can do to make it right. Antonio put his hand on Elena's shoulder. Elena, sometimes we must accept help. Your grandmother gave you a gift? Now it is time to share that gift with the world. But you cannot share it if you are sleeping in parks. If you are hungry, if you are struggling to survive, let these people help you. It is not charity. It is recognition. Recognition of what you are. Elena looked at all these people. An hour ago she had been alone. Completely alone. Now she had a legendary conductor supporting her. A famous director wanting to hear her play. A wealthy businessman offering her a place to stay. It felt like a dream. It felt impossible, but it was real. Okay, she said quietly. I will do the audition. I will accept your help, but I want you to know something. I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this for fame. I'm doing this because of my grandmother. Because she believed in me. Because she gave me her violin and told me to share the music with the world. I want to make her proud. That is all I want? Sarah smiled. It was the first time she had really smiled all night. Then you will make her proud, she said. I promise you that. The next few days were like a whirlwind for Elena. Everything happened. So fast, Richard's driver took her to the hotel that night. The Plaza was the fanciest place she had ever seen. The lobby had marble floors and crystal chandeliers. The staff wore uniforms and called her Miss and Ma'am. Her suite was bigger than the entire apartment she had grown up in. It had a bedroom, a living room, a bathroom with a giant bathtub, and a view of the entire city. Elena stood at the window for a long time. She looked at all the lights below. All those people living their lives. Just a few hours ago she had been one of the invisible ones. One of the people that nobody saw. Now she was standing in a palace in the sky. She thought about her grandmother. I wish you could see this, Baba, she whispered. I wish you could see what is happening. The next morning, a woman came to the hotel. Her name was Mrs. Williams, and she worked for the Philharmonic. She was there to help Elena prepare for the audition. First things first, Mrs. Williams said. We need to get you some proper clothes. And we need to fix your hair. And you need to eat. Have you been eating? Elena shook her head. Not much? For a long time? Mrs. Williams looked at her with sad eyes. Well, that changes today. The hotel has an excellent restaurant. I want you to eat 3 meals a day. Whatever you want. The bill is taken care of. Over the next 3 days, Elena was transformed. She went to a salon and had her hair washed, cut, and styled. She went to a nice clothing store and tried on dresses for the first time in years. She ate real food, good food, and slowly felt her strength returning. But the most important thing was the practice. Every day she practiced for hours. Mrs. Williams had arranged for her to use a private room at the concert hall. It had perfect acoustics and complete privacy. Elena played until her fingers hurt, then rested, then played some more. She practiced the pieces she knew by heart. The Tchaikovsky Concerto, the Paganini Caprices, the Bach partitas. She played them over and over, making sure every note was perfect. Making sure every emotion was real. Antonio came to visit her on the second day. He brought her a gift. It was a book about the history of the violin. Inside, he had written a note: "Dear Elena, music is not something we do. It is something we are. You have known this since you were a child. Now the world will know it too. With admiration and respect, Antonio." Elena held the book to her chest. She had not had anyone believe in her like this since her grandmother died. It felt strange. It felt wonderful. It felt terrifying. On the third day, Sarah Chun came to hear her practice. She sat in the empty concert hall, alone, while Elena played on the stage. It was strange to play for one person in such a huge space. But Elena closed her eyes and pretended she was playing for her grandmother. That always helped. When she finished, Sarah came up to the stage. She was smiling, but her eyes were serious. "Elena, I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course," Elena said. "Do you want this?" "Not because Antonio wants it. Not because I want it. Not because Richard feels guilty. Do you want this? A career in music? The pressure? The performances? The travel? The constant scrutiny? It is not an easy life. It looks glamorous, but it is hard. Very hard." Elena thought about the question. She thought about the years of practice, the sacrifice, the pain. She thought about sleeping in parks and playing for coins on street corners. She thought about everything she had lost. And then she thought about the music, the feeling of the violin in her hands, the sound of the notes filling the air, the connection with audiences, even small ones, even just one person listening and feeling. "Yes," she said. "I want this. I have wanted this my whole life. Music is not just something I do. It is who I am. Without it, I am nothing. With it, I am whole." Sarah nodded. She seemed satisfied with this answer. "Good," she said, "because after your audition tomorrow, everything is going to change. The world is going to know your name. Are you ready for that?" Elena took a deep breath. She looked at her grandmother's violin. She thought about all the hands that had held it before her, all the music that had come from its strings, all the love that was built into its wooden body. "I am ready," she said, but she was not sure that was true. How could anyone be ready for what was about to happen? Tomorrow would tell. Dr. Sarah Chun was at home when her phone rang. She was sitting in her living room reading a book about Mozart. She was tired. It had been a long day at the orchestra. There had been meetings and rehearsals and problems to solve. All she wanted was a quiet evening. When she saw Antonio's name on her phone, she smiled. Antonio had been her mentor many years ago. He had taught her everything she knew about conducting. He had helped her become who she was today. She always had time for Antonio. "Antonio," she said warmly, "it is late. Is everything okay?" "Sarah." Antonio's voice was strange. It was shaking. "Sarah, I need you to come to a restaurant called The Golden Table right now, tonight." Sarah sat up straight. "What is wrong? Are you hurt?" No. I am fine. But Sarah, I have found something. Someone, a violinist. And she is... Sarah, I have been in music for 50 years. I have heard everyone, but I have never heard anything like this. You need to come. You need to hear her yourself." Sarah was confused. Antonio was not a man who exaggerated. He was not a man who got excited easily. If he said something was special, it was special. A violinist? Who? Where did you find her? On a restaurant patio. She was playing for food. Sarah, she is homeless, a refugee from Ukraine. Her story is heartbreaking, but her talent is beyond anything I can describe. Please, come now. I'm afraid if we wait, we will lose her. Sarah did not ask any more questions. She trusted Antonio completely. If he said this was important, it was important. I will be there in 20 minutes, she said, back at the restaurant. Elena was still sitting by the heater. Mr. Richardson had brought her a bowl of hot soup and some bread. It was the first real food she had eaten in days. She tried to eat slowly, but she was so hungry. She finished the soup in minutes and felt embarrassed. Would you like more? Mr. Richardson asked. His voice was kind now, gentle, very different from before. No, thank you, Elena said. This was more than enough. You're very kind. Mr. Richardson shook his head. I was not kind before. I treated you badly. I'm sorry for that. Elena did not know what to say. In her experience, people did not apologize. They did not admit when they were wrong. This was new. It is okay, she said quietly. You did not know. Across the patio, Richard was still sitting at his table. His friends had left long ago. His wife, Margaret, had gone inside to warm up. But Richard could not move. He kept replaying the moment in his head. The moment he had laughed at Elena, the moment he had called her a drug addict, the moment he had said she probably found her violin in the garbage. He felt sick. Truly sick. He had been so wrong. So cruel. So blind. He thought about his life. His big house. His expensive cars. His important business. He had everything the world said a man should want. But sitting here, watching a homeless girl eat soup, he realized something. He was poor. He was poor in all the ways that mattered. He had money but no kindness. He had success but no soul. Elena had nothing. And yet she had something he did not. She had a gift. A real gift. Something that could touch people's hearts and make them feel alive. Richard stood up slowly. He walked across the patio toward Elena's table. His heart was pounding. He did not know what he was going to say. He just knew he had to say something. Excuse me, he said. Elena looked up. She recognized him. The man who had laughed. The man who had mocked her. She felt her body tense. I know you probably do not want to talk to me, Richard said. And I understand. But I need to apologize. What I said before, it was wrong. It was cruel. It was unforgivable. Elena watched him carefully. She did not speak. I thought I knew who you were, Richard continued. I looked at your clothes and made assumptions. I decided you were nothing. That you had nothing to offer. But I was wrong. What you played tonight was... I cannot find the words. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard. He paused. His voice was shaking. I am a businessman. I have made a lot of money. I have always thought that money was what mattered. That success was what mattered. But tonight, listening to you play, I realized how wrong I have been. You have something that money cannot buy. You have something real. Elena looked at this man. A few hours ago, he had seemed like a monster. But now she saw something different. She saw a man who was confused. A man who was lost. A man who was trying, maybe for the first time, to be honest. Thank you, she said quietly. For saying sorry. That takes courage. Richard nodded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Please, he said. Let me give you something. Money, whatever you need. Elena shook her head. No, thank you. But no. I did not play for money. I played for food. And I have eaten. That is enough. Richard did not understand. Most people he knew would take money without thinking. This girl was different. This girl had pride. At least let me pay for your dinner, he said. And for anywhere you need to stay tonight. A hotel? Somewhere warm. Before Elena could answer, Antonio came back to the table. He was smiling. His eyes were bright. She is coming, he said. Dr. Chen is coming. She will be here in 15 minutes. Elena, this could change everything. Richard looked confused. Dr. Chen? Sarah Chen? The director of the Philharmonic? Antonio nodded. You know her? I donate money to the orchestra, Richard said. I sit on the board, but I had no idea. You called her? For this girl? This girl, Antonio said firmly, is the most talented violinist I have ever heard in my life. And I have heard them all. She deserves to play on the greatest stages in the world. Not on restaurant patios? Richard looked at Elena with new eyes. The director of the Philharmonic was coming to hear her. Antonio Rossi, the legendary conductor, was calling her the most talented he had ever heard. This homeless girl in torn clothes was about to meet one of the most powerful people in classical music. Is there anything I can do? Richard asked. Anything at all? Antonio thought for a moment. Actually, yes. When Dr. Shin arrives, I want Elena to play again. But she is cold. She is tired. She needs to be comfortable. Can you make sure she has everything she needs? Hot tea? A warm blanket? Anything. Richard nodded quickly. He walked to Mr. Richardson and spoke to him urgently. Within minutes, the staff was bringing out blankets, hot drinks, and extra heaters. They moved them all to Elena's table. They treated her like she was the most important guest in the restaurant. Elena sat wrapped in a warm blanket, holding a cup of hot tea. She could not believe what was happening. This morning she had woken up in a park, cold and hungry and alone. Now she was sitting in a nice restaurant, surrounded by people who wanted to help her. I do not understand, she said to Antonio. Why are you doing this? You do not know me. You owe me nothing. Antonio smiled gently. Elena, I have spent my whole life looking for people like you. People who have the gift. The real gift. It is the rarest thing in the world. And when you find it, you must protect it. You must help it grow. This is not about owing. This is about love. Love for music. Love for beauty. Love for the things that make life worth living. Elena felt tears in her eyes again. She thought about her grandmother. Her grandmother had said something similar once. Music is a gift, she had said. And gifts are meant to be shared. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up in front of the restaurant. A woman got out. She was in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She wore a simple black coat over a dress. She walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. This was Dr. Sarah Chin. She came onto the patio and looked around. Antonio walked to meet her. They hugged briefly. Where is she? Sarah asked. Where is this miracle you called me about? Antonio pointed to Elena, who was standing up from her chair. She still had the blanket around her shoulders. She looked small and young and afraid. Sarah walked toward her. She studied Elena's face. She looked at the old violin case. Hello, Sarah said. I am Sarah Chun. Antonio tells me you play the violin. Yes, ma'am, Elena said quietly. I play a little. Antonio laughed. A little. She says she plays a little. Sarah, wait until you hear her. Sarah nodded. Okay then. Play for me. Play whatever you want. Elena took off the blanket. She picked up her violin. She looked at the small crowd that had gathered, Mr. Richardson and the staff. Richard and his wife. Antonio and Sarah, other diners who had heard about the girl. With the magic violin, she took a deep breath, and then she began to play. She played Paganini's Caprice No. 24. It is one of the hardest pieces of music ever written. Many professional violinists cannot play it at all. Those who can usually make mistakes, Elena did not make any mistakes. She played it perfectly. Better than perfectly. She played it like Paganini himself was guiding her hands. Sarah Chun stood completely still. Her mouth was open. Her eyes were wide. In 30 years of classical music, she had never heard anything like this. Antonio had not exaggerated. This girl was a genius. A true genius. The kind that comes along once in a lifetime. When Elena finished, there was a moment of complete silence. Then Sarah Chun did something she had not done in 20 years. She started to cry. The morning of the audition, Elena woke up before the sun. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the concert hall. She saw the judges. She saw everything that could go wrong. She got out of bed and walked to the window. The city was quiet. The streets were empty. The sky was just starting to turn pink. Elena picked up her violin. She did not play. She just held it, feeling its weight, feeling its history. Her grandmother had held this same violin 70 years ago. Her grandmother had learned to play on these same strings. Now it was Elena's turn to carry the music forward. "Help me, Baba," she whispered. "Help me today." At 9 o'clock, Mrs. Williams arrived at the hotel. She had a beautiful blue dress for Elena to wear. It was simple but elegant. The color of the sky on a summer day. "You look wonderful," Mrs. Williams said when Elena put it on. "Like a real concert violinist?" "I do not feel wonderful," Elena admitted. "I feel scared." Mrs. Williams smiled kindly. Every great performer feels scared before they go on stage. Fear means you care. Fear means this matters to you. Use that fear. Turn it into energy. Turn it into passion. They took a car to the concert hall. It was a beautiful building made of glass and steel. It looked modern and serious, important. Elena had practiced there. But seeing it now, on the day of her audition, it felt different. It felt bigger. More intimidating. Inside, the lobby was filled with people. Musicians, staff, important-looking men and women in suits. Everyone was busy. Everyone had somewhere to go. Elena felt invisible again, like she had felt on the street. Like she did not belong. Then she saw Antonio. He was standing near the main doors, waiting for her. His face lit up when he saw her. "There she is, Hid. The future of classical music. How are you feeling, Elena?" "Terrified," she said honestly. Antonio laughed. "Good. That means you are taking this seriously. Come, let me tell you who you will be playing for today." They walked through the building toward the main concert hall. Antonio explained as they went. "The committee has 7 members. They are all experts. Sarah Chun, of course. She is the chair. Then there is the principal conductor, James Morrison. He is very serious, very demanding. He has heard thousands of auditions. He is not easily impressed." Elena felt her stomach tighten. Then there are the section leaders, the concertmaster, David Liu, the principal cellist, Margaret O'Brien, the principal violist, Thomas Green. They will be listening for how well you can work with others, how well your sound fits with an orchestra. "And the other 2? Elena asked. "Board members. Richard Hammond and Victoria Stone. They handle the business side. The money. They will be watching to see if you have star quality, if audiences will want to see you." Elena stopped walking. "Richard Hammond? The man from the restaurant?" Antonio nodded. "He is one of our biggest donors. He sits on the board. When he heard you were auditioning, he insisted on being part of the committee." Elena did not know how to feel about this. The man who had mocked her would now be judging her. Was that good or bad? She could not tell. They reached the doors of the main concert hall. Antonio put his hand on Elena's shoulder. "Listen to me," he said. "What happens in there today will change your life. But no matter what the committee decides, I want you to know something. You are already a great musician. You were great before this audition. You will be great after it. Nothing they say can change that." Elena nodded. She felt tears in her eyes but did not let them fall. "Not now, not yet. Thank you, Antonio. For everything. Thank me by playing your best. That is all I ask." The doors opened. Elena walked into the concert hall. It was enormous. 2,000 seats, all empty. The stage was at the front, lit by bright lights. A single microphone stood in the center, and at the front of the seats, in the first row, sat 7 people. The committee. Sarah Chun stood up and smiled warmly. "Elena, welcome. Please, come to the stage. Make yourself comfortable. When you are ready, you can begin." Elena walked down the long aisle toward the stage. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hall. It felt like walking for miles. Finally, she reached the steps and climbed up to the stage. She stood in the center, under the lights. The committee looked small from up here, but she could feel their eyes on her. judging, evaluating, waiting. She took out her violin. She held it up. She looked at the committee. "I would like to play 3 pieces," she said. Her voice was steady, stronger than she expected. "The first is the first movement of Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto in D major. The second is Paganini's Caprice. No, 24. The third is the Chaconne from Bach's Partita No. 2. Sarah nodded. "Whenever you are ready." Elena closed her eyes. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the small house in Ukraine. She thought about the war and the bombs and everything she had lost. She let all of that pain flow into her heart. And then she began to play. The first notes of the Tchaikovsky filled the concert hall. They rose up to the ceiling and spread out to every corner. They were rich and full and achingly beautiful. In the front row, James Morrison, the principal conductor, leaned forward in his seat. He had heard this concerto hundreds of times. He had conducted it with the greatest violinists in the world. But something about this performance was different. Something about this girl was different, Elena played on. Her eyes were still closed. She was not in the concert hall anymore. She was in another place. A place where only music existed. Where the violin was not an instrument but an extension of her body. Where every note was a word and every phrase was a sentence and the whole piece was a story. She was telling to the universe. The committee members watched in stunned silence. They had seen many auditions. They had seen talented musicians and average musicians and everything in between. But they had never seen anything like this. David Liu, the concertmaster, was a violinist himself. He had played professionally for 30 years. He knew technique. He knew skill. And what he was watching was beyond anything he could do himself. This girl was not just playing the notes. She was living them. She was breathing them. She was becoming the music itself. The Tchaikovsky ended. Elena did not pause. She went straight into the Paganini. This piece was a test of technical skill. The fastest fingers. The most precise movements. Most violinists played it slowly, carefully, trying not to make mistakes. Elena played it at full speed. And she did not make a single mistake. Not one. Thomas Green, the principal violist, actually laughed out loud. It was a laugh of disbelief. Of amazement. He had never seen anything like it. Finally, Elena played the Bach Chaconne. This piece was different from the others. It was not about speed or technical skill. It was about depth, about emotion. About taking a simple melody and transforming it into something that touched the soul. Elena played it like she was praying, like she was speaking to God, like she was saying goodbye to everyone she had ever loved and hello to everyone she would ever meet. The notes hung in the air like sacred things, like gifts from another world. When she finished, there was complete silence. The last note faded into nothing. Elena stood on the stage, breathing hard, her eyes still closed. Then she opened them. Sarah Chun was crying again. James Morrison was staring with his mouth open. Richard Hammond had his hand over his heart. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then James Morrison stood up. He looked at Sarah Chun. He looked at the other committee members. And then he started to clap. One by one, the others joined in. They stood up. They applauded. Not politely. Not professionally. They applauded like people who had just witnessed something extraordinary. Something they would never forget. Sarah Chun stepped forward. Her voice was emotional when she spoke. "Elena," she said, "the committee will need to discuss formally. But I think I can speak for everyone when I say this. We have never heard anything like what we just heard. Never in our lives." She paused. She wiped her eyes. "Welcome to the Philharmonic." The news spread fast. The day after her audition, Elena's phone started ringing. She did not know how people got her number. Mrs. Williams explained that Sarah Chun had shared the news with some colleagues. Those colleagues had shared it with others. Within 24 hours, everyone in the classical music world was talking about the homeless girl, who had stunned the Philharmonic Committee. Newspapers called. Television stations called. Music magazines called. Everyone wanted to interview the refugee violinist. Everyone wanted to hear her story. Elena did not want to talk to anyone. She was overwhelmed. Too much was happening too fast. She stayed in her hotel room and tried to understand how her life had changed so completely in just 1 week. Sarah Chun came to see her on the second day. She had a serious look on her face. "Elena, I need to talk to you about what happens next." "What do you mean?" Elena asked. "Your audition has created a lot of attention. More than we expected. The board met last night to discuss you. They have made a decision." Elena felt her heart beat faster. "What decision?" Sarah sat down on the sofa in Elena's suite. She looked at Elena carefully before speaking. "We want to offer you a position as a guest soloist. You would perform with the orchestra as a featured artist. Your first concert would be in 6 months. It would be broadcast live to audiences around the country." Elena could not believe what she was hearing. "A guest soloist? But I just arrived. I have no experience with orchestras. I have not performed publicly in years." "That does not matter," Sarah said. "What matters is your talent. And your talent is extraordinary. The board believes you can be a star, Elena, a real star. The kind of musician who can bring classical music to people who have never listened to it before." Elena was quiet for a moment. She looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere out there were the streets where she had slept, the corners where she had played for coins, the doorways where she had hidden from the cold. "What about the other musicians?" she asked. "The ones who have worked for years to be in the orchestra? Will they not be angry that I am getting special treatment?" Sarah smiled. "Some of them might be jealous at first. That is human nature. But once they hear you play, they will understand. They will be honored to perform with you." Elena thought about her grandmother again, about all the sacrifices she had made, about all the years of teaching and encouraging and believing. "I have one condition," Elena said. Sarah raised her eyebrows. "What is that?" "My first concert. I want to play the Tchaikovsky concerto. The same piece I played that night at the restaurant. It was my grandmother's favorite. She used to hum it while she cooked dinner. I want to play it for her, even though she cannot hear it anymore." Sarah's eyes grew soft. "That is a beautiful choice. The Tchaikovsky it is." Over the next 6 months, Elena worked harder than she had ever worked in her life. She rehearsed with the orchestra 3 times a week. At first, it was strange to play with so many other musicians. She had been alone for so long. She had forgotten what it felt like to be part of something bigger than herself, but slowly she learned. She learned to listen to the other instruments. She learned to follow the conductor. She learned to give and take, to lead and follow. The orchestra members who had been skeptical at first began to respect her, then to admire her, then to love her. James Morrison, the principal conductor, became like a father to her. He spent hours teaching her things she had never learned at the conservatory. How to breathe with the orchestra, how to communicate without words, how to make 2,000 seats feel like an intimate room. "You have the talent," he told her one day. "More talent than anyone I have ever worked with. But talent alone is not enough. You must also have wisdom. You must understand that music is not about showing off. It is about sharing. It is about giving something to the audience that they cannot get anywhere else." Elena listened and learned. She practiced until her fingers bled, just like when she was a child. She read books about music history. She watched videos of great violinists from the past. She soaked up everything like a sponge. During this time, Richard Hammond became an unexpected friend. He came to watch her rehearsals whenever he could. He sent her flowers and notes of encouragement. He never asked for anything in return. One day, Elena asked him why he was being so kind to her. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That night at the restaurant, I saw who I really was. And I did not like what I saw. I was cruel. I was arrogant. I thought money made me better than other people. But watching you play, I realized something. Money does not make someone valuable. What makes someone valuable is what they can give to the world. and you can give more than anyone I have ever met." He paused. His eyes were wet. "I cannot change what I did. I cannot take back the things I said, but I can try to be better. I can try to help you succeed. Maybe that will not erase my shame, but at least it will mean something good came from that terrible night." Elena reached out and took his hand. "You have already helped me more than you know," she said, "and I forgive you. I forgave you the moment you apologized. Holding on to anger is too heavy. I have carried enough heavy things in my life." As the concert date approached, the publicity increased. News stories about Elena appeared everywhere. The homeless virtuoso, from streets to stage. Refugee violinist stuns music world. Her face was on magazine covers. Her story was shared millions of times on social media. Elena did not like the attention. She found it overwhelming and strange. She just wanted to play music. She did not want to be famous. But Sarah Chun explained that the publicity was important. "Classical music is dying," Sarah said. "Young people do not go to concerts anymore. They think classical music is boring and old-fashioned. But your story changes that. Your story shows them that classical music is alive, that it can touch anyone, that it belongs to everyone, not just rich people in fancy clothes." Elena understood. She agreed to do some interviews. She told her story again and again. She talked about her grandmother, about Ukraine, about the war, about being homeless, about that night at the restaurant when everything changed. The night before the concert, Elena could not sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened 1 year ago. She had been on a bus crossing the border out of Ukraine. She had nothing but her grandmother's violin and a bag of clothes. She had no money, no friends, no future. Now she was about to perform for thousands of people. Her face was on billboards. Her name was in newspapers around the world. It seemed impossible. It seemed like someone else's life. She got out of bed and picked up her violin. She played softly in the dark hotel room. She played her grandmother's favorite melody. The same melody she had heard as a child, floating through the tiny house in Ukraine. "I wish you could be here tomorrow, Baba," she whispered. "I wish you could see what has happened. I hope I make you proud." She could almost hear her grandmother's voice in the silence. "You have always made me proud, my little one, always." Elena wiped her tears and put the violin down. Tomorrow was the biggest day of her life. She needed to rest, but as she lay back down, she could not stop smiling. Whatever happened tomorrow, she was ready. The concert hall was full, 2,000 seats, and every single one was taken. People had come from all over the country to see Elena perform. Some had flown from Europe, from Asia, from South America. The homeless virtuoso had captured the world's imagination. Backstage, Elena stood in front of a mirror. She wore a beautiful red dress that Sarah Chun had helped her choose. Her hair was done perfectly. Her makeup was light and elegant. She looked like a different person from the girl who had begged for food just 7 months ago, but inside she felt the same. She felt like Elena, the girl from the small village. The girl with her grandmother's violin. Mrs. Williams knocked on the door. 5 minutes, she said. Elena took a deep breath. She looked at herself one more time. Then she picked up her violin and walked toward the stage. The wings of the stage were crowded with people. Musicians warming up. Stagehands checking equipment. Sarah Chun was there, waiting for her. "How do you feel?" Sarah asked. "Like I might throw up," Elena admitted. Sarah laughed. "That is completely normal. I still feel that way before every concert. It means you care." She put her hand on Elena's arm. "You are going to be wonderful. I know it. Just go out there and play from your heart. That is all you need to do." Elena nodded. She could hear the audience through the curtain, the murmur of thousands of voices, the rustling of programs, the anticipation in the air. The lights in the hall dimmed. The audience grew quiet. This was it. James Morrison walked out first. The audience applauded warmly. He was a respected conductor, known around the world. He stepped up to the podium and raised his baton. Then it was Elena's turn. She walked out onto the stage. The spotlight hit her face. She could not see the audience because of the lights, but she could feel them. 2,000 people, holding their breath, waiting to hear her play. She walked to the center of the stage. She bowed. The applause was thunderous. Elena looked out into the darkness. Somewhere out there was Antonio, the man who had discovered her. Somewhere was Richard Hammond, the man who had learned to be kind. Somewhere were the staff from the Golden Table restaurant, who had been given free tickets for tonight. And somewhere, Elena believed, was her grandmother, watching from wherever she was now. Proud and happy and full of love, Elena raised her violin. She placed the bow on the strings. She looked at James Morrison. He nodded. The orchestra began to play the opening of the Tchaikovsky concerto. The music swelled and grew. It filled the concert hall like water filling a bowl, and then Elena began her part. The sound that came from her violin was unlike anything anyone in that hall had ever heard. It was rich and deep and impossibly beautiful. It soared above the orchestra and wrapped around every person in the audience. It touched their hearts. It made them feel things they had forgotten. They could feel in the front row. Richard Hammond sat next to his wife Margaret. Tears were already running down his face. He thought about the night at the restaurant. The night he had mocked this incredible girl. The night he had called her nothing. How wrong he had been. How foolish. How blind. Beside him, Margaret reached over and took his hand. She was crying too, but they were happy tears, proud tears. They were witnessing something beautiful. A few rows back, Mr. Richardson from the Golden Table sat with his staff. The young waiter with red hair, the one who had laughed at Elena, was staring at the stage with wide eyes. He could not believe what he was seeing. The homeless girl in torn clothes was now standing on the greatest stage in the city, playing music that seemed to come from heaven itself. Antonio sat in the balcony, watching his discovery with joy and satisfaction. He had been in music for 50 years. He had heard everything. But this moment, watching Elena perform, was the greatest of his career. This was why he had devoted his life to music, to find talents like her, to help them shine. Sarah Chun stood in the wings, listening. She had made the right decision. She had taken a chance on a homeless refugee with nothing but an old violin, and that chance had paid off 100 times over. Elena played on. She played the first movement, then the second, then the third, each one more beautiful than the last. She played like her grandmother was standing beside her, guiding her hands. She played like the music was the only thing that mattered in the world. When she finished the last note, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the audience exploded. People jumped to their feet. They cheered. They cried. They clapped until their hands hurt. The applause went on, wave after wave. Elena stood on the stage, overwhelmed. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl, but the reality was more powerful than any dream. She felt the love of the audience washing over her. She felt connected to everyone in that hall, to everyone who had ever loved music, to everyone who had ever felt alone and found comfort in a melody. She took a bow. The applause grew louder. She took another bow. People started throwing flowers onto the stage. She looked up at the lights. She thought about her journey. The war, the loss, the hunger, the cold nights on the street. The moment she had walked into that restaurant and asked to play for food. It had all led to this. And now, standing in the spotlight, surrounded by flowers and applause, Elena understood something important. Her grandmother had been right all along. Music is never begging. Music is giving. She had given everything she had tonight. Her talent, her heart, her soul. And in return, she had received something precious. Connection, love, purpose. The audience finally settled down. James Morrison gestured for quiet. He had an announcement to make. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "what we have witnessed tonight is extraordinary. I have been conducting for 40 years. I have worked with the greatest musicians in the world, but I have never seen anything like what we just saw." He turned to Elena. "Elena, on behalf of the Philharmonic, I would like to offer you a permanent position as our principal guest soloist. You have a home with us for as long as you want it." The audience cheered again. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. A home? She had a home. She stepped forward to the microphone. Her voice was shaking when she spoke. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you all. 1 year ago, I had nothing. I had lost my country, my family, my hope. I was alone on the streets, playing for food." She held up her violin. This violin was my grandmother's. She gave it to me when I was 4 years old. She told me it had magic inside. But she said the magic only works if you have music in your heart. She paused. The audience was completely silent. I never stopped believing in that magic. Even when I was hungry. Even when I was cold. Even when people laughed at me and told me I was nothing. I never stopped believing. Because my grandmother taught me that music is a gift. And gifts are meant to be shared. She looked out at the audience. 2,000 faces looking back at her with love and admiration. "Tonight I shared my gift with you. And you gave me something in return. You gave me hope. You gave me a future. You gave me a family." She started to cry. But she kept talking. "I want to thank everyone who helped me. Antonio, who heard me play on a patio and saw something worth saving. Sarah, who gave me a chance when I had nothing. Richard, who learned that kindness is more valuable than money. And my grandmother, who is not here tonight but is always in my heart." She held her violin close. "This concert is for her. Every note I play is for her. I hope wherever she is listening. And I hope she is proud." The audience rose to their feet one more time. The applause was like thunder, like rain, like the sound of 2,000 hearts beating as one. Elena stood on the stage. Tears on her face, flowers at her feet, surrounded by love. She had come so far. From the small village in Ukraine. From the horrors of war. From the cold streets of a strange city. She had lost everything. And she had found something new. She had found her purpose. Her home. Her family. She had found herself. And as she took her final bow, she smiled through her tears. Because she knew her grandmother was watching. She knew her grandmother was proud, and she knew that this was just the beginning. The music would never stop. The magic would never die. She was Elena, the girl with the violin, and her song was only starting, the end.